Hello and welcome to After Hours, a TV film podcast brought to you by basketball.com. We are through Remembering the Office. We are going episode by episode, season by season, remembering one of the best TV shows of all time, at least in our minds. Today we are doing season 3, episode 4, Grief Counseling. And with me on all of these episodes, none other than Jack Manuel. Jack, how's it going, man?
We're bringing in a new segment for this one, Kory. A new ranking, a new scoring system. So
Okay.
we're gonna have fun with this one. It's three seasons and 3 episodes, a little bit late, but we finally got it in there.
The cold opens. Now, this show is famous for the cold opens. Right before you hear that jingle that we all know so much associated with The Office, we have these little, 2-minute, 3-minute skits. The most memorable one prior to this is when Michael burns his foot on the toaster, or on the George Foreman grill, of course. But this one is pretty damn good. Now, this cold open is Michael, faking a staircase behind boxes and going to get an assortment of items for people around the office. Dwight is loving every minute of it. He's like a kid in a candy shop watching Michael do the prank. And Pam, a little bit evil. Like, when some people say Pam is a terrible character and a bitch, I see this episode, I'm like, there's like a small case. Like, she's like, can I have a coffee? She makes this guy crawl for a coffee, come back and go, ooh, cream and sugar. And he goes back and gets it. It's a top-notch cold open. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. What if you were to? You wrote. I know in your notes you wrote elite. Give me a number out of 10.
9. I'll give it a 9. It's a good cold open. I'll give it a 9.
I don't know, but for me, the 9s are reserved for the truly iconic ones, like, Stress Relief and others. Those get like 10 out of 10s because they're some of the best television history. This one is very, very good and fringe 9, but I couldn't give it because to me, it just, I don't know, it was great and it was very funny and I loved it. I've mentioned a million times the Dwight and Michael dynamic. Pam being a bit of a bitch here, I like it because Michael gives her so much shit throughout the entire show, including in this episode being a little bit creepy as well. So Pam getting one up on Michael, I don't hate either.
No, it's a good cold open. I might be a little bit high on it because it was the first cold open I remembered to actually rank. So, but it's a good one. And then, of course, this isn't one of the, again, like we were just talking about a little bit off air, this isn't one of those like ha-ha episodes. Like, there are some funny moments in it, but it really is has a more serious undertone throughout it. And obviously, that being the fact of, the episode starts off with us finding out that the old manager, Michael's old boss, Ed Truck, has died. And Michael's, response when she's like, we can't find Ed Truck. And he's like, all right, I'll see if I have his number. She's like, no, he's dead. And obviously it kind of sets the tone because, Michael, it doesn't start off this way, but Michael kind of throughout the episode starts to realize that no one gives a shit about someone who had his job. And as we know, Michael becomes, feels like he's worthless in a lot of ways and feels like people don't care about him or people aren't going to care about him whenever he goes. And he wants people because Kelly gives him some fakes, not fake sympathy, but she's like, oh, you must be so sad. He's like, yeah, I'm very sad. But yeah, it's definitely a more serious undertone. But what are some of the funnier moments that stick out to you?
I mean, Creed's heat check moment where he's going back and forth with Michael and Dwight. Do we want to recreate that one?
Yeah, let's do it. Who do you want to be?
Starting with Creed, it's a real shame about Ed, huh? I'll be Michael and Dwight.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a real shame about Ed, huh?
Yeah, must really have you thinking.
About what?
The older you get, the bigger chances you're going to die. You knew that.
Ed was decapitated.
What? Really?
He was drunk as a skunk. He was flying down Route 6. He slides under an 18. Pop. Snaps right off.
Oh my God. That is the way to go. Instant death. Very smart.
A human can go on living for several hours after being decapitated.
You're thinking of a chicken.
What did I say? It's the two best parts of that is Creed, going through, drunk as a skunk, flying down Route 6, and then Dwight going, no, that's the way to go. Very smart. Like as if Ed Truck planned it. Very smart. And then Creed, he always has these moments. We like to allude to a farther episode when he tasks Jim to marry his daughter, and Jim's like, I'm marrying Penny. He's like, I thought you were gay. He's like, well, why'd you ask me? I don't know. Like, this is one of those moments where Creed's like, what? Like, why did you say that? Like, you don't remember what you said? Good Creed moment.
Yeah, you're thinking of a chicken. And I think that it's perfect that Dwight has that line. You're thinking of a chicken because it speaks to the fact that he would know about all sorts of animal weird death trivia, and Creed just being oblivious to not just that fact, but basically the world around him. I can't remember if it was a previous episode we were talking about, like, he was at Woods. No, it was gay when Oscar comes out as being gay, and Creed's
Someone
like,
slipped in.
So I'm like, my guy. Okay, that's I guess a little more questionable than like not knowing about chickens with their heads cut off. But it's still like Creed just needs to pay attention a little bit more to the world around him.
He's the most off the wall character in this show by far.
Yeah, no doubt.
Even though this next line by Dwight, which I think is also just absolutely hilarious, is when he goes, "When I die, I want to be frozen. And if they have to freeze me in pieces, so be it. I will wake up stronger than ever because I have used that time to figure out exactly why I died and what moves I could have used to defend myself better now that I know what hold he had me in." Like, what? Dwight? Like, what do you think is going to happen to you?
Once you die, you stop thinking. Like you can't like think about what's going to happen when you come back to life. Obviously we know about cryogenics and all that sort of thing, but once you're dead, my guy, you can't think about what happened previously. You will if you do somehow come back to life. But good line from Dwight, that one, a really good one.
Absolutely. And then I think not necessarily like it's Michael being just a dick and callous, but it is somewhat funny when he's like, we have a day honoring Martin Luther King Jr. and he didn't even work here. It's just like, why doesn't a truck have a statue and all this other stuff? Like, it's obviously off the wall and wrong, but it's just funny how Michael's trying to like justify why they need and why he down the road will deserve something if he ever goes.
It speaks to a previous quote that Steve Carell said when in the gay episode, again alluding to that one, and when Oscar comes out as being gay witch hunt, where Michael is just purely has no idea about the world. He's in his own little bubble, and he just knows these certain things, and his heart is in the right place, but what and how he communicates is just so off base that it makes no sense at all. But we know because of how good Steve Carell is as an actor that he always remained at least somewhat endearing from season 2 onwards. We talked about the early iterations of Michael Scott in season 1 and how he wasn't really likable or whatever. But yeah, he's obviously flourished. And while these comments there were comments I think from Creed in previous episodes that sort of really put me off. I'm like, nah. But this comment from Michael, I still did laugh at. We both do like a bit of dark humor, and The Office certainly explores that in a lot of episodes.
100%. And at the same time, in this conversation, Jane and Dwight in the background, they do talk about the fact they could honor Ed Truck with a robot. And just the back and forth of Dwight being like, we better make it 2/3, easier to stop if it turns on us. Mike, and then like at the end, when he goes, it's a 6-foot extension cord. And Michael's like, perfect. So you just unplug the robot. It is comical because, again, we have these moments in this episode where like they feel like they get things, like they understand the world. And you get a moment like this, you're like, all right, nope, they don't. They're back into La La Land.
Yep, that's it's true. Basically, another line that Dwight, when they all get together in the conference room, Dwight when he gets the ball. When my mother was pregnant with me, they did an ultrasound and found she was having twins. When they did another ultrasound a few weeks later, they discovered that I had reabsorbed the other fetus. Do I regret this? No. I believe his tissue is maybe stronger. I now have the strength of a grown man and a little baby. Like.
It's absolutely, and he's on a heat check in this episode. He honestly says some off the wall things. Honestly, that entire conference room scene is very funny. Now, of course,
Do we want to go from Michael and Pam? So like, okay, I'm gonna toss. So obviously they have the ball and they're trying. And to be honest, it's actually a decent method of grief counseling. I actually like it. It's creative and it's trying to sort of get. Now no one else needs it, but Michael. But the method that he's using is a good way of doing it. I wanted to start from where Michael's like, okay, I'm gonna toss the ball to Pam, and then Pam obviously and Ryan do their thing, and then Kevin do their thing.
Yeah, okay.
All right, let me quickly find the line where it's okay and toss the ball to Pam. Let me find the word.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Who do you want to be here?
I'll be you be Michael and I'll be all the sub characters.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna toss the ball to Pam.
Let's see. I had an aunt that I was really close to. She was this amazing female boxer. Anyway, she was injured in a fight and she was paralyzed. Imagine how upset I was when I found out that she asked her manager to remove her breathing tube so she could die.
Wow. If you want to cry, that's okay.
And Ryan, obviously. Thanks. A few years ago, my family was in a safari in Africa, and my cousin Mufasa was he was trampled to death by a pack of wildebeest, and we all took it really hard. All of us kind of in the audience of what happened.
Do you want to talk about it anymore?
Oh, it would probably take me like an hour and a half to tell that whole story. Me. Yes. Okay. I was trying to throw this party once, and everyone was over for the weekend, and then my Uncle Bernie died, and so me and my best friend, we had to pretend like he was alive. So
wait a second. That's Weekend at Bernie's. Do you think that this is a game? Well, there is a ball. I love that line from Phyllis. Massive heat check from Phyllis with just this five words. Absolutely steals the scene in a lot of ways.
It's her. Where is the ball is great, and then honestly, Michael and Toby's interaction at the end is absolutely hilarious. In which he says there was a bird Dad downstairs, and Michael's like, "How do you know? That bird was dead. Did you check its breathing? It was obvious. Was its heart beating, Toby? Did you check it? No, of course you didn't. You're not a oh, no. I botched the word. You're not a veterinarian. You don't know anything." And he just storms off. That scene honestly had me cackle out loud. That was a hilarious scene. Especially how Dwight chases after him.
I like within the scene we just discussed where Ryan's facial expression when he knows what Pam's doing is like, and he's like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna get it on this." And Pam is trying to pretend that she's sad, and she sort of just does this. No, she doesn't actually say anything. She just shakes her head, and then everyone sort of gets in. And when Kevin starts speaking, and the camera pans to Ryan, and Ryan's just like he's like, Kevin's just ruined it for everyone. Even Michael is gonna understand this shit.
Because Kevin couldn't keep a straight face. The guy's just laughed the whole time.
And he smiles. The Kevin smile.
That conference scene is really good. The next funny moment I had is when Michael catches Dwight trying to shove the dead bird into the can. And then when Michael gets mad, Dwight's response is, "I'm sorry I grew up on a farm. We slaughtered a pig whenever we wanted bacon. My grandfather was reburied in an old oil drum. It would have fit if he had given me another minute." And it's just like, wait a minute, did you shove your grandfather in an oil drum? I don't, questionable.
He did say in Casino Night, I think it was, where he was wearing the nice tuxedo, that was his grandfather's, if I'm remembering right. So maybe he did. It wouldn't surprise me. Maybe 2 and 2 do add up. Within that scene as well, Dwight and Michael's back and forth. Michael, get away from your head! He's covered in germs and bacteria. You can't get diseases from a bird. It's like, my guy, you can get a lot of diseases from birds.
Birds are, to anyone listening, birds are dirty. Do not touch birds or put your birds near your face. That is a bad idea.
Yeah. I wanted to, because there aren't a lot of funny moments. There are probably more towards the end of the episode. I wanted to touch on, there's a couple of romance moments. Angela and Dwight, when they're sort of having a back and forth about, talking about Dwight's death. Jim and Karen's entire storyline is romance, flirtiness. It's quite wholesome and stuff. For me, I'm not sure about you, because I have always been a Jim and Pam stan. I like Karen, and I think that she does get a fair amount of hate that is unwarranted. But I just don't believe in the chemistry as much because the chemistry with Jenna Fisher and John Krasinski is so insane. I'm not saying Rashida Jones isn't awesome and I love her in basically everything she does. It's just, and maybe that's part of the reason that it's because it's leading. We know what it's building up to, and it's like, these guys aren't meant to be together. They're the one. It's like they're the one before the one, so to speak, if that makes any sense. And I do like it, and they do have a nice relationship, and this is all really nice and flirty. And we spoke about in the last episode how it's sort of building up, and this sort of episode solidifies it. And spoiler alert, they were going to get together.
It's a cute flirtationship at this point.
Yeah.
But I agree with you because obviously we've seen it so many times, and it's Pam and Jim, that just from like my own like dating experience of like when you're out of a relationship with someone you were in a relationship with, Karen just reminds me of what you're looking for from the last person, right? Like it almost feels like Jim's trying to recreate his relationship with Pam, kind of like, no, we're gonna do this chip thing the whole day. Kind of playing into it. She's on the phone making voices, right? She's talking in a French type of accent. Yeah. So it feels like, Jim is, looking obviously because he's not going to stop his dating life, in this new office, this new environment. But it definitely felt like he was trying, to me, it felt like it was a knockoff Jim and Pam type of back and forth in which he was trying to recreate something that he lost with Pam with somebody else.
What is funny in this episode as well is we sort of see it with Pam and Roy. So like at the same time, you have Jim and Karen and how they're always somewhat intertwined, and the comparison points, the cause and effect or whatever. As they're doing the grief counselling, Roy comes in and makes up a nice lie about Pam's cars. There's something wrong with her car, and they go out and talk. And there's still a bit of a spark there. There's still something there. I mean, when you've been with someone for so long, there's always going to be something that lingers. I guess I'll put to you in terms of the connection between the two relationships, Jim and Karen or Pam and Roy. Who do you think has a better sort of vibe connection out of those sort of two couples?
Karen and Jim, 100%.
Okay.
I think because again, like we kind of talked about in one of the past episodes, with Roy and Pam, I feel like it's always been more physical rather than anything mental. And even in their conversation, there's not really any like good substance. It's still kind of awkward. He's like, "So you still driving fast?" Yeah. Does this have airbags? Like, what? Like, yeah. Like, why wouldn't it have airbags? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the conversations are just not as clean. Whereas with Jim and Karen, it does feel like they are both effortlessly talking to each other.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I think that the standard.
You lean towards Pam and Roy on that, or what?
Maybe a little bit, but I think it's because that Pam and Roy have shown that they can last. And sometimes when you do break up with someone and you get back together with them, it can be better if you do sort out those issues. And they did to an extent up until we'll get to episodes where it sort of does.
Yeah.
But I get why Roy is not necessarily bringing a heap of substance to it, because he realizes that when you are breaching or trying to reconnect with someone, you do so lightly. It's like, all right, let's just keep things surface level. Let's keep the pleasantries. Let's try and sort of do it's things that like sort of Jim would say, like, goofy sort of flirting where just, you got airbags here. You can shoot it as sort of being like, this dunderhead, what the fuck's he talking about? But other people would be like, well, he's just like trying to play it cool and not try to, push too hard too early.
Yeah, I could totally see that. The only other office romance part I had is we do find out that Kelly can't get Ryan to confirm a date because she's like, I've been trying to confirm a date, and Ryan keeps forgetting about it. But that was the last bit of office romance that I had written down. Yeah, and of course Jim does come through and get the chips.
Yep. Yeah, which is a nice moment, and it made me want potato chips after I saw that. So I've got not many trivia points, Kory. If we wanted to, I've got 4 in total.
Okay, hit them.
I guess because we haven't talked about the bird funeral yet, now would probably be a good time. During the bird funeral, the cast wore coats despite the hot summer weather because the show's shot in LA. Actress Kate Flannery commented in her weekly blog she wrote for TV Guide that, Quote, we suffered while shooting the outdoor scenes. We had to act like it was cold when it was warm. For hours and hours, you would never know it by looking at us. Isn't that crazy?
That is pretty nuts. I wouldn't have thought it was hot.
Yeah, I mean, they do a good job of it. Obviously, when you film in LA, it's never cold, but
Yeah.
there are seasons. The first cut of this episode was actually 45 minutes. I think a lot of episodes in general are of a higher. So it's not to say that other episodes weren't of that length. It's just that this came up in my trivia research. The movies that Pam, Ryan, and Kevin were alluding to during the conference room scene. Million Dollar Baby for Pam, Lion King obviously for Ryan. That was my favorite. And Kevin with Weekend at Bernie's. I loved Ryan.
It was great.
Like my cousin Mufasa, and trampled by will to peace. Oh, it would probably take like an hour and a half. It's great, absolutely great.
That leads into my last favorite moment of this episode is Ryan's story about his fish. When I was 5, my mom told me that my fish went to the hospital in the toilet and it never came back, so we had a funeral for it. And I remember thinking, I'm a little too old for this. And I was 5. and it perfectly just, describes how, Ryan probably mostly always feels about the bird funeral that everyone is having, take place outside.
Yeah, my favorite line was probably, or one of my favorite lines. My favorite line is just the interaction with Ryan and, some heat check moments from Dwight and Creed. But Michael, I think this might be the final sort of moment of the episode. Society teaches us that having feelings and crying is bad and wrong. Well, that's baloney, because grief isn't wrong. There is such thing as good grief. Just ask Charlie Brown. That's a good line, and that's clever and smart.
It is a good line, because good grief. He said that, and I don't know, but it stuck out. I was like, oh, Charlie Brown does, he does say that, in the show. Yeah, that's a good wholesome line. I mean, again, the entire funeral is not really funny, but it's really wholesome, right? Pam tells this really good story about who the bird could have been, what the bird could have meant. Michael is clearly, teared up, and she also is the one who makes the funeral box for the bird. Of course, we find out that Dwight just stomps it out and puts it out with the fire extinguisher, which kind of makes it a little bit eek. But it's the funeral is pretty wholesome. Would be one of my final notes on that.
It is. It's everyone sort of holding hands a little bit. It's cute, and it's nice because Michael deserves to have reassurance in these moments. And we've all experienced some level of grief and uncertainty about our own sort of, not to get existential and deep about it, but our own mortality. But a good show does get you to question those things. Despite the fact that this is a comedy, it does delve into a wide range of emotions and feelings. And yeah, again, good shows do that. We might not give this the best ranking ever, but it doesn't mean that it's still not a good episode.
Well, yeah, because our rankings are more so based on the ha-ha factor.
More just general enjoyment. General enjoyment. And we've both spoken to what we enjoy in Office episodes, and while there were some very funny moments, overall, when unless it's Dwight sort of leading the way, or Michael and Dwight, or Michael just leading an episode, it's unlikely to be an 8.5, 9 episode.
100%. Which comes to our ratings of the episode.
One more trivia point. My final one. Mindy Kaling wrote that this episode is resulted in the worst disagreement she ever had during her years on the show, where she and Greg Daniels, a normally very nice person, disagreed on a story point to the extent that if you were going to resist what I'm doing here, you can just go home. Kaling briefly left the set before returning with no further problems or repercussions noted, which is saying something because Mindy's also a writer for the show and one of the great writers in Office history. So, yeah, that to me was probably the trivia point that stuck out most out of these couple.
I wonder what it was that she didn't like that she was so against that made her, almost, get in some trouble.
Yeah, I couldn't necessarily find that out. All it had is just the fact that she did want to leave, and she didn't. I don't think she wrote this episode. No, she didn't. It was written by Jennifer Salotta. So, yeah,
one of
maybe
the great mysteries now of this episode is what happened behind the scenes now.
What did happen behind the scenes? Mindy Kaling at us, at the J-Man JBT, at K-Wall Hoops.
So now ranking this episode, I'm gonna give it an 8. But I could have given it a 7.5, but I'm gonna give it an 8 because even though it's not haha funny, I do think some of the wholesome moments are good. Like it's still because again, like as you mentioned, we've all had the thought about our own mortality. What happens? Will people care? So like I think like it's not bad that we can relate to Michael in a human sense and in a moral sense. So I still think that's a worthy quality of this episode. So I still give it an 8.
Yeah, you know me, I split the difference. I go in the 0.25, so I gave it a 7.75. IMDb did give it an 8 out of the IMDb rating, and the users had it as an 8 out of 10. So you are on point with them, Mr.
Okay.
Waldron.
Sounds good on that. Now for the heat check, who are you giving it to? Because I know you said you have 4 candidates. So who are your candidates first off?
Ryan, Creed, Kevin, and Phyllis.
Okay.
I'm giving it to Ryan, man. I think that the line that you alluded to about him being 5 and sort of just being like, what the hell is going on here? And then the story he told in relating to The Lion King. One, I love The Lion King. The Lion King's one of my favorite movies ever. So the fact that when I first saw this episode, I pissed myself laughing. The delivery, also his facial reactions. We don't have Jim doing many facial reactions these days because he's not in the office with Michael. But Ryan is sort of replacing him in a lot of ways in different points. He's providing some heat check facial moments.
Yeah, I'm gonna give the heat check to Ryan too. This was a really good performance by Ryan because he hasn't really had that many like standout moments the last few episodes. This was definitely a welcome back to the screen type thing for Ryan. So Ryan, heat check performer, MVP. Now, MVP's kind of tough. I don't think it's Michael.
I had Michael personally. Did you have Dwight?
I had Dwight. I think Dwight's couple stories in which the fetus story I think is really good. We grew up on a farm. Like what does he expect? And then also like his reaction to Ed Truck being decapitated, his reactions to Michael doing the cold open skit. Like I just think Dwight's energy this episode, like even the way he reacts to the funeral. When Pam goes, maybe it's a song. Maybe he was gonna come sing us a song, and then Dwight's like, "It's not a songbird." He's like, "It made me an impression," and Dwight's just like, I don't know. So, I feel like you're right. It probably should be Michael, but I'm gonna give it to Dwight.
Yeah, do it. My reasons for giving it to Michael. One, you can't get diseases from a bird is a line that I don't know why. It just made me really laugh, and I think it's Steve Carell's delivery. I'm not against giving it to Dwight, to be honest. The relatability as well, we talked about the sort of mortality angle of Michael. And I think how he delivered that beyond him delivering his humorous lines, his funny lines, I thought was great too. We've sort of all gone through a journey of emotions when it comes to grief. And then the final line of the episode, whenever he closes, maybe I guess it's a recency sort of bias, but closing with there is such a thing as good grief. Just ask Charlie Brown. Like it's an awesome line as well. It's one of my favorite lines. And again, the writers give them the lines. It's how they delivered, and Dwight maybe delivers his lines better.
I mean, I almost want to say Michael next. I'm thinking about the whole Michael and Toby scene. I just love it. How Michael's like, oh, how do you know? How do you know? Chicken's breathing? You don't know. You're not a veterinarian. You don't know. You don't know anything. It is really fun. I'm still going to give it to Dwight, but Michael was a really close second for me this episode. So, Jack, final thoughts. Where can the people find you?
At the J-Man JBT, doing lots of stuff for OTG basketball, at OTG basketball in the off-season, free agency stuff, ranking stuff, trade stuff, a heap of different stuff. Brooklyn Buzz, we did a freaking 70-minute episode, and somehow, I have no idea, and we've still got more content. We haven't even discussed the Amari Stoudemire signing. So the Brooklyn Buzz is doing well. JBT is going to be recording again over the weekend. Podcasts are plenty. Articles and content are plenty at otgbasketball.com.
As Jack said, go to otgbasketball.com. Check out the YouTube, OTG Basketball. Subscribe, like. We are now full on into the video content era of OTG Basketball. Definitely check that out. Be sure to follow Jack on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at KWalHoops, KWAL Hoops. And until next time, Peace out, knuckleheads.